Hello everyone and welcome to Life Begins at 20. My name is Mark and today we have the penultimate video of my massive cube update where we're going to be taking a look at all of the artifacts and equipment that is in my cube. Now I'd just like to say again thank you so much for everybody that made all of the initial comments before, because the cube is playing so much better, and thank you again to everybody who's already commented on all of the previous videos from this cube update, because there's been so many great suggestions and my list is getting huge again, so thank you again so much for that, and without any further ado, let's get stuck in. So starting off with the equipment, and there's a fair few things I'd love to get my hands on. I don't have any of the 5 swords, and I do also have Batterskull, and they're definitely ones I want to be able to get into my cube. So if you have any other suggestions for cards that may not be those, I'm going to try and get them proxied as soon as I possibly can. But if there are any other artifact pieces of equipment that may well end up being useful, do again let me know in the comment section below. So starting off, we've got Bone Splitter here, nice piece of aggressive equipment there, so paying 1, equip cost of 1, equip creature goes +2/+0, and it's something that I do not mind having out and just moving around to get onto more and more powerful creatures. Do not mind having that. Next up we've got Skull Clamp, again an old cube favourite here for a lot of people. 1 cost, equip cost of 1, the equipped creature gets +1/-1, and whenever the equipped creature is put into a graveyard, draw 2 cards. And just being able to, abuse killing off loaded tokens if you can create them regularly, or recursive creatures as well. Being able to do this and getting load of card draw, I love being able to do that, and it's probably one of my most first pick cards. Next up we've got Basilisk Collar, so it's a card that I've managed to add here from Modern Masters 2017. 1 cost, equip cost of 2, equipped creature has Death Touch and Lifelink, and I really do like that about it, in the sense that you can then kill off any creature you want with Death Touch, putting on like a small blocker for example, plus you're getting life out of it as well, or you can put it onto a bigger creature and your opponent's then going to think twice about blocking it. Plus the fact that lifelink means that you're just going to be able to get further and further away from your opponent there. Next up we've got Captain's Claws. I really do like this piece of equipment. It's done some significant work for me. So 2 cost there with an equip cost of 1. The equipped creature gets +1/+0, and whenever it attacks, put a 1/1 ally creature token onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. So it's just going to be able to push through that extra little bit of damage, especially if you're going wide. Plus it's another token generator, which means that you've got another target for Skull Clamp for example on the battlefield, another thing to be able to sacrifice if you're playing aristocrats or anything along those lines. Plus it just means if you've got an Anthem, it's going to get even bigger, and if you've got Exalted on top, you can be able to then swing in for even more damage later on. So that is just a fantastic card there. Next up we've got Lightning Greaves. So this is really useful. 2 cost there, equip cost of 0. Equipped creature has haste and shroud, so it just means anything you put onto the battlefield, you can put these on them, swing in for a load of damage. Plus the fact it has shroud means that there's going to be quite a lot for your opponent to actually be able to get rid of it, and I really do like that about this card. Next up we've got Conquerors Flail. It's probably better suited for either a multicolored multiplayer game for example, where you can just ramp up. That's why it's made in Commander, but at the same time, even if you can only splashing, you've got 2 colours potentially splashing for a third. Most of the time this has come out as giving the creature +2/+2 for 4 costs there, including the 2 cost and then 2 equip, and as long as it's attached to a creature, your opponents can't cast spells during your turn. And this has proved to be actually very useful in, say, a green ramp desk for example, or even if you're playing, say, a go wide strategy or something along those lines, where it just means your opponents then can't play burn spells for example against your creatures, can't play counter spells to get counter any of the things you're trying to do, and you can just pump up if you need to be, and I really do like that about this. Next up we've got Sword of the Animist. Again, there's been a little bit hit and miss in the cube. If I can get hold of a sword, any of the swords, or Batterskull, this would definitely be coming straight out. 2 cost with an equip cost of 2, gives the equipped creature +1/+1. Fine, it's a tiny bit of a buff, but nothing too exciting. But whenever the equipped creature attacks, you may search your library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle your library. So in that sense, it's actually good for ramping you up, getting yourself ahead. So you've got other ramping spells within green for example, plus being able to do this on top just means you're going to be able to outcurve your opponent very quickly. That respect has been quite good, but at the same time it's quite expensive for what it needs to be doing, and most of the time whenever any creature ends up having this, unless you're already miles ahead of them, your opponent's not going to be, he's going to end up dealing with this very quickly, or at least the creature that's on. Next up, we've got Grafted War Gear. So again, perfect for the aggressive decks. 3 cost there. Quick creature gets +3/+2. Whenever it becomes unattached from a creature, you have to sacrifice that creature. Again, you're not going to have too much of an issue if it's like just a 1/1, for example, and then you're going to be throwing this on something even bigger. And the quick cost of 0 means you can move it around as many times as you want if needs be. And to be perfectly honest, I've actually used this on a go wide strategy. Managed to get out one of my aristocrat style cards to be able to drain the opponent down, and I've had 10 tokens out on the battlefield and just kept moving Grafted War Gear over and over and over and over again, and just really made a huge 20 life swing with that card. Next up, we've got Loxton Warhammer. I have definitely been liking this card in my cube. 3 cost with 3 to equip it as well. A quick creature gets +3/+0 and has trample and lifelink, and that can just prove to be a significant amount of life change over the course of the game unless the opponent deals with this. You're going to be gaining a lot of life just from the extra +3 on the top there, and if your opponent isn't blocking for the same amount of damage that's going to be being taken, you're going to be able to get yourself every single time a bigger and bigger gap, and that's why I do like that. And the last up, we have got Bone Horde here, so we have got a living weapon. You can pay 4, becomes a living weapon there, and a quick creature gets +X/+X, where X is the number of creature cards in all graveyards. It has proved to be actually come up fairly big in some games, but this is definitely more suited to Commando, which is where it came from. Plus it's got a quick cost of 2 if you wanted to actually put it onto one of your creatures as well. So again, Batterskull would be far better within this within my cube, and I'd love to have all of the 5 swords as well. But again, if you have any other suggestions for me of any pieces of equipment, I would love to hear them. So moving on to the main section of artifacts now, we're going to start off with the 0 cost artifacts here. Yes, this is probably a little bit too overpowered for my cube, but having opened it up in Eternal Masters, it was just phenomenal, and I wanted to put it in there. Again, it is definitely probably going to be a bit too powerful, but Mana Crypt is a fantastic card, and I like the fact that, as much as it can be absolutely incredible, it's still going to be dealing damage to yourself as well, potentially, so there is a little bit of a drawback there, but no, it is a fantastic card, and I'm very glad to have it, even if it isn't probably suitable for what I've got. Next up, we've got Lotus Bloom. So this is a 0 cost purely down to the suspend there. A suspend of 3, so after 3 turns you've got the card then, and you can tap it to sacrifice it and add 3 mana of any one colour to your mana pool, and that's really nice for ramping out with. Next up, we've got Lotus Petal. So again, 0 cost, tap it, sacrifice it, add 1 mana of any colour to your mana pool. That's, to be perfectly honest, really nice for just a little bit of mana fixing there, or you can end up playing a higher level card on your opening turn. And the last one, even though it says it's a 0 cost, and I mean it's nice in foil, I'm trying to show that off there. Realistically, this isn't a 0 cost. Because you're going to be paying a multi-kicker every single time. So enters the battlefield with a charge counter on it for each time it was kicked. Realistically, if you wanted to try and get the most out of this, you would put as many of those multi-kicking into as possible, but it just means then you can tap it for 1 mana to your mana pool for every single charge counter on it. So later on in the game, if you're able to actually splash a load of mana into this, you'd be able to ramp yourself up really quickly. And it does look really nice in foil, I must admit. So moving on into the 1-drops, and as you can already probably say again, I'm hearing it in the comment section below, why on earth have you got Soul Ring in your cube? To be perfectly honest, yes, it is a very powerful card. I don't actually have the power 9, but this is probably a bit too powerful for my cube, is what you're saying there. I can completely understand it, but from my experience in a 720 cube, I don't necessarily see it all that often in a draft, and to be perfectly honest, with the amount of other things going on in the cube, I don't see it as too much of a detriment having it in here. That being said, I could probably trade out Soul Ring and my Mana Crypt and put them in for, say, like a Chrome Mox and a Lion's Eye Diamond would probably be a little bit fairer, and I may well end up doing that in the future once I've got the cube to a power level all the way through, and then you can start seeing these cards actually being very abusive. But for now, I don't see it being too much of an issue. Coming straight back down to earth now, we've got ourselves Terrarian here. So for 1 cost artifact, enter the battlefield tapped. You then pay 2 and tap it to add 2 colour mana of any combination to your mana pool, and then when it goes into the graveyard after you've sacrificed it, you get to draw a card as well. And if you could discard it, you also again get to draw a card. So again, it can be quite useful. There are certain circumstances where it has been great, but again, it's got nowhere near the same as Sol Ring there. Next up, Sensei's Divining Top. Again, some people might go, that's a little bit of an abusive card, but again, in the size of the cube, you don't see it all that often. And I just, everybody actually enjoys playing this. So 1 cost, you can pay 1 to look at the top 3 cards of your library and then put them back in any order, and then you can tap it to draw a card and then put it back on top of its owner's library. So you've got a constant source of scrying 3 and then drawing a card, so you're fixing your turns up. So again, really, really handy card there. Next up, we've got Brittle Effigy. So this has got a couple of things you can do here. Either you can pay 5 straight away for the 1 and then paying the 4 to tap it and exiling it to exile target creature. Again, I don't have an issue doing that. Or you put it out early on and then it's just a threat for your opponent to kind of go, do I want to play this big creature while you've got that on the board until I can remove it? Just give them a bit of a question there. So that's been quite handy. Next up, we've got Aether Vial, and I've really enjoyed having this new card being put into the cube. So 1 cost, at the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a charge counter on it, then tap it to put a creature card with a converted mana cost equal to the number of charge counters on it from your hand onto the battlefield, and you're just getting yourself a free creature, potentially if you've actually got the creatures the same mana curve there, every single time. And that is fantastic. Or, you're getting yourself a free creature every so often up until something absolutely massive and getting that on for free. Always nice to have. Next up, we've got Relic Progenitor, and absolutely love this in foil. And it's just a little bit of graveyard hate going on now. So for 1, you can then tap it. Target player exiles a card from his or her graveyard. So again, if you're playing against Reanimator or a graveyard heavy deck, this is going to be quite useful to be doing that. Or you can pay 1, exile it, and then exile all cards from all graveyards and get to draw a card as well. So again, it's really going to hamper an opponent's Reanimator style deck going on there, or if they are really going heavy for graveyard and recurring creatures. Next up, we've got Voltaic Key. So for 1 mana, you've got yourself the artifact. You pay 1 and to tap it to untap another target artifact. So it can potentially give you a bit more mana ramp. You can untap Isotron Scepter to be able to, cast another spell for free or anything along those lines. Or even, exiling out another creature again with Relic. It's just got so many great uses, and I really have been enjoying that. Plus, you can even, untap a target artifact creature as well. So it's even got Pseudo Vigilance going on. Next up, again, another cube favourite here in Pithing Needle. It's just got so many great uses, and I'm so glad to finally got this into my cube. So paying 1 mana, you enter the battlefield, name a card. Activated abilities of sources from chosen name cannot be activated unless they're mana abilities, and this is just fantastic. So many great uses for this. If you know your opponent's got a certain card, for example, or it's out on the battlefield, you just basically lock down a card from doing anything fantastic for the rest of the game, and I really do love that about this. And I can't wait to, I've got a Phyrexian Revoker, and there has been one that has been spoiled from Ilaxan, which I'm a little bit disappointed about seeing those, but because it's so far away from the set, but I am very, very glad that there's going to be more of those effects. And last up, we've got Altar of the Brood. So for 1 mana, whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent puts the top card of his or her library into a graveyard. Yes, it's a bit of a mill going on here, and it probably shouldn't be in here. I have got rid of a lot of the milling cards. From the suggestions I've already had from my Dimir cards, there is 1 card, I think it's the Consuming Aberration, that definitely needs to probably come out and be replaced with something a little bit better, because mill is just a little bit of a horrible thing going on. But to be perfectly honest, I didn't see 1 card every so often being too much of an issue. But again, if you've got this in the right kind of deck, it may well be. So again, if you have any other suggestions for me for artifacts, that'll definitely end up being taken out. So moving on here to the 2-drops, we're going to start off with all of the signets here. So I'm going to try and get all of them into the shot at once. Some of them have got new artwork, like this one here, for example, from Modern Masters 2017. And to be honest, I know they're not everybody's cup of tea, but I actually really do like having these in here. Yes, it just means you can splash a little bit extra if you want to, but to be perfectly honest, I haven't had any issues playing these. I haven't had people complain about them in my cube scenarios as of yet, and they're a little bit of a Marmite card, and I will completely understand that, but I just like having the extra mana ramping abilities going on here, and being able to splash a little bit easier for a second colour is the main reason why I'm in here, not really for the third colour, but I know everybody each their own, but I'm enjoying having them in here. I think this is the only foil one I've managed to get from Modern Masters 2017, and to be perfectly honest, The one card I would have loved to have got in foil out of all of them was the Dimir Signet, but you know, I can pick that up at a later date. Next up, we've got Mind Stone. So it's for 2 mana. You can tap it to add 1 mana to your mana pool. Again, that's more than fine. Plus, you can pay 1, tap it, and sacrifice it to draw a card. So it's got a little bit of use later on if you don't need the mana ramp anymore. Next up, we've got Prophetic Prism here, and pay for 2 mana there. So enter the battlefield, you get to draw a card. That's nice to have. Plus, then you pay 1 to tap it to add 1 mana of any colour to your mana pool. So you're getting a bit of card draw there. Plus, it's a mana fixing. It's slightly expensive mana fixing, but it's mana fixing nonetheless for any colour you need. Next up, we've got Cold Steel Heart. So it's 2 mana, enters the battlefield tapped. As it enters the battlefield, you get to choose a colour, and you can tap it for 1 mana of that chosen colour to your mana pool. So it's, again, a nice bit of mana fixing going on there for any colour that you may need. Next up, we've got Key to the City, and I've actually been fairly impressed with this. I've got Rogue's Passage in my cube as well in the land section, but again, this has done a fairly decent job. So you're tapping it, discarding a card, filling up the graveyard, don't have an issue doing that, and up to 1 target creature can't be blocked this turn, and whenever it becomes untapped, you may pay 2 if you do draw a card. So it's got a fair bit of uses, especially if you've got extra mana, fills up the graveyard, and if you are even playing, you know, hypothetically, big creature style deck, discarding a card to make something unblockable and do a significant amount of damage to your opponent, don't have an issue with that. Plus the extra card draw is always nice. Next up, we've got Prismatic Lens. Again, it's another mana rock going on here. So 2 mana, tap it for any colourless mana, or you can pay 1 and tap it for add any mana of any colour to your mana pool. So again, you can pay for fixing, or it's just a useful mana rock. Next up, we've got Isostron Scepter, and again, this is a really, really nice cube favourite for a lot of people. So you can pay 2, you imprint it, so when it enters the battlefield, you may exile an instant card with converted mana cost 2 or less from your hand. As long as it's in your hand, that's going to be fantastic. You can then pay 2 and tap it, and you may copy the exile card. If you do, you may cast it without paying its mana cost. So, you know, that's going to be 2 mana every single turn for lightning bolts, counter spells, anything you really fancy that costs 2 mana at instant speed. Even, you know, your Izzet Signet, so you've got a little bit of versatility there as well. It's just fantastic, and I really, really do like having that, especially in a spells heavy deck. And last up, we've got Fellwar Stone. So again, another mana rock here. 2 mana, tap it to add colour mana to your mana pool that your opponent can produce. So it may end up working out in your favour, else it's going to be a mana for any colour there. So moving on into the 3-drops, we've got Chromatic Lands in here, potentially a little bit of an abusive card in the sense that it just means that you can enable, you know, 5 colour good stuff if you really, really wanted to. I haven't actually seen that happen as of yet, but it is great for mana fixing for all sorts of good reasons. So again, three costs there. Lands you control have tap for any colour mana to your mana pool. Again, that's great for fixing. Again, it could potentially be abused to go even further than that. Plus, you can tap it, add 1 mana of any colour to your mana pool as well. So it's a mana rock on top of itself. Very, very nice card, potentially a little bit powerful, but at the same time I've been enjoying it. Next up, we've got Worn Power Stone, and this has recently been updated to a foil version, and I really do like that in foil. Looks absolutely stunning. So again, 3 cost here, counts the battlefield taps, but you then tap it to add 2 colourless mana to your mana pool, and that's always fairly useful, especially in the sense that I've actually got some Eldrazi that, you know, Eldrazi Displacer, for example, which would like to have those colourless mana there to be able to blink something, and I also support Waste in my basic land section if people wanted to, but it's just another way of people being able to get that colourless mana source there. Next up, we've got Cryptolith Fragment. I've actually enjoyed this. It did some great work for me in Eldritch Moon pre-release, for example. It's done an alright job in the cube, but again, there's probably going to be better scenarios that could end up using a different card. So 3 mana here, enters battlefield tapped. You can then tap it to add 1 mana of any colour, to your mana pool. Each player loses a life, so again, you're going to be draining down your opponent while getting yourself some mana. At the beginning of your upkeep, if each player has 10 or less life, you have to get to transform it. And it becomes something fairly horrific in the sense that it's a 1/4 flying death touch, and whenever it attacks, each opponent loses 3 life. Again, this won me a load of games in pre-release. I've actually won a couple games in cube with it as well. It's got to that stage, but Again, there's probably better cards out there. Next up, we've got Sears Lantern. So again, 3 costs for a mana rock, tap it for a colourless mana. Again, that's going to be handy for different Eldrazi, for example, like Kozilek, or even just, the Eldrazi Displacer again. Or you can pay 2, tap it to scry 1 if you don't need the mana there, and sort out your turns. Next up, we've got Mimic Vat, so get 3 mana here, imprint it, so whenever a non-token creature is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, you may exile that card. If you do, return each other card exiled with Mimic Vat to its owner's graveyards, and then you can pay 3 and tap it to put a token onto the battlefield. There's a copy of exiled card, it gains haste, and then exile at the beginning of the next end step. So you're going to be able to abuse enter the battlefield triggers with this. You're going to be able to get yourself something even bigger than you could possibly have for 3 mana there, as long as it's gone into the graveyard, and you can just abuse things that way, and I really do like that for it. Next up, we've got Pilgrim's Eye, 3 cost here, flying 1/1. There's probably better things again out there. My artifact section isn't fantastic, as you're probably well able to see here. It does need some significant work. So flying 1/1, when it enters the battlefield, you can search your library for a basic land, reveal it, and put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. Again, you're going to get yourself some extra land cards, a bit of fixing later on if you need to be. And then you've got yourself a 1/1 flying blocker if you want, or you can even abuse the enter battlefield trigger if you really wanted to with that one, but you don't. It's not necessary, and it's not the best one to be able to abuse anyway. Next up, we've got Crystal Shard. So for 3 mana, you can either pay 3 and tap it, or a blue and tap it to return target creature to its owner's hand unless its controller pays 1. Again, it's a perfect target for Voltaic Key, for example, to bounce a load of creatures up back to their owner's hands to be able to swing in, for the win there. Potentially, it's more likely to be better off put into the blue section, like Vidalcan Shackles. I'd love to get my hands on. Again, that'll probably go into the blue section, and I may need a little bit of adjustment here for that, but I've only got this in the main artifact section purely down to the fact that I wouldn't necessarily have a problem paying 3 and tapping it to push something back to its owner's hands that's actually a massive great creature. Next up, we've got Dynavox Tower, and this is something I've been fairly impressed with in the cube for another finisher, but well, not necessarily a finisher, but some extra damage coming in for the Spells Matter deck. I don't have Shrine of the Burning God in my cube as of yet. It's definitely one to put on my list to pick up, but this is doing a fairly decent job. So whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you get 2 energy counters, and then you can tap it to pay 5, and it does 3 damage to target creature or player. Depending on the style of deck you've got for the Spells Matter style, you can be able to do a lot of damage there, plus it may even well be decent enough to have in a burn deck, for example, a counter spell deck, or a control heavy deck where you've just got this sitting on the board, getting you a load of energy counters and just pinging in for extra damage. And the fact it's still in here because it's self-sustainable, I don't need specific cards like Glimmer of Genius to be able to give me extra energy counters there. And then the last card we've got in our 3-drop section here is Tumble Magnet. So for 3, enter the battlefield with 3 charge counters on it. You can then tap it to remove a charge counter from it and tap target artifact or creature. So I find that quite useful again to have with Voltaic Key, for example. You can then use this to untap this to then tap down another artifact or creature your opponent's control, so to be able to again swing in for a significant amount of damage. So moving on into the 4-drops now, we've got Hedron Archive. So 4 mana there, you can tap it for 2 mana into your mana pool. That's more than fine. Or you can pay 2 to tap it and sacrifice it to draw 2 cards if you don't need the mana then later on in the game. Again, Thran Dynamo is something I'm looking to pick up at some point as a mana rock, but this is doing a fairly decent job. Next up, we've got another one of my cards I got from the Vault Annihilation in Smokestack there. It just works so nicely. In a Braids deck, for example, along with this, or Pox as well. I need to put small Pox in my cube. I've found the card in my collection, so definitely need to put that in there. And it's just having that kind of archetype. I would like to be able to support it by being able to, sacrifice a load of creatures that I can get, or recurring creatures I can just get and then bring back. And it just means then you're going to put your opponent under some significant pressure there. So at the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a soot counter on Smokestack. Beginning of each player's upkeep, that player sacrifices a permanent for each soot counter on Smokestack, and that's just can become very, very amusing. Next up, we've got Nevinyrral's Disc. So for 4, it's enter the battlefield tapped. You can then pay 1 and tap it, destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. So it's a board wipe, yes, in the sense that it's telegraphed. People know it's going to be happening, and they've got to try and be able to deal with it within 1 turn, or you can get rid of the entire board, or you can just keep it there as a threat for your opponent, and they can just you can just have it sitting there so your opponent doesn't necessarily overextend on you, or it's just a little bit of a deterrent there, and I do like that about it. Next up, we've got Icy Manipulator. So for 4 cost, you've got 1. Pay 1, tap it to tap target artifact, creature, or land. Again, perfect for Voltaic Key there to be able to then untap this and tap down another thing as well. Next up, we've got Panharmonicon, and this is probably one of my favourite cards from Kaladesh, especially in the artifact section, because if an artifact or a creature entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of opponent you control to trigger, that ability triggers twice. Who doesn't want to have double the enter the battlefield triggers? That's just absolutely hilarious, and to be perfectly honest, I love having this in my Blink decks, or to be honest, most of the decks. With the amount of enter the battlefield triggers there are in Cube, it does some significant work there. Next up, we've got Aetherworks Marvel, the lovely banned card that's now in Standard. It does work by itself. It probably does need to have some energy generation to make it even better, but whenever a opponent you control is put into a graveyard, you get 1 energy. You can then pay it, tap it, pay 6 energy, look at the top 6 cards of your library, cast a card from among them without paying its mana cost, and put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. The amount of amazing cards you could potentially cast from the top 6 of your deck for free is incredible. It doesn't work in every single deck for obvious reasons, but if you are able to facilitate this card, it can do some serious work for you. But again, it's probably something in here which I go, well, it could probably be taken out because of the lack of energy generation elsewhere. But again, it does prove its uses. Next up, we've got Goblin Char Belcher. So again, for 4 mana, it comes into the battlefield, you pay 3 and tap it. Reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a land card. It deals damage equal to the number of non-land cards revealed this way to target creature or player. If the revealed land was a mountain, it deals double that damage instead. And put the revealed cards on the bottom of your library in any order. So again, if you're playing, red burn deck or something along those lines that's just mono red, this will do some significant work for you. If not, to be perfectly honest, it may still do some significant work for you as well. But, you can just keep going and going and going. If you don't have very many lands, for example, you could try and get really lucky with this once you can get it out quite quickly and just have very little lands within your actual deck. And just, if it's mono red as well, just deal some significant damage and potentially kill a player off in one go. I do quite like this, and it actually has, burnt away an opponent from at least 12 life. Has just been burnt down to 0 with this card by itself, and that I quite like about it. And last of all, we've got Aligned Hedron Network. Again, not overly fussed by this card. There's probably better cards out there, but when it enters the battlefield, exile all creatures with power 5 or greater until it leaves the battlefield. So again, this can be quite useful in the sense that someone's maybe playing Reanimator and they're going a little bit slowly, or Tooth and Nail happens and you can try and get this out to counteract that as well in the following turns. Just there are certain situations where it can become quite useful, but at the same time, it can be a little bit lackluster. So last up in the 5+ drops, we're going to start off with Meteor right here. So for 5 cost, enters the battlefield, deals 2 damage to target creature or player. Then it becomes a mana rock for tapping it for any colour of mana. A little bit on the expensive side, I must admit, but there are certain circumstances where it has been quite a beneficial card to be playing, but there probably is a case of this could be taken out if I can then find something better to find a cheaper costing thing there. And the last up, we've got Astral Cornucopia. Again, potentially a bit too expensive for the cube, but at the same time, if you want to have some significant ramp and you've got a load of mana, playing a super ramp deck, for example, and you've got loads and loads of mana to be able to spend to really pump this up, enters the battlefield with X charge counters on it, so you're paying 3 mana per charge counter, and then you get to tap it, choose a colour, add 1 mana of that colour to your mana pool for each charge counter on there. The benefit for that is you get to choose the mana whenever you want to, whereas Everflowing Chalice you can't. And it just, you can just keep, if you can spend say 9 mana on it, you're getting 3 every single turn. If you can keep going up and up and up and up, you can be able to ramp yourself for some significant amount of mana there. But again, there probably are better options that are cheaper. So there we have all of the artifact cards I have within my cube. Now, like I said during the video, I'd love to get hold of all 5 of the swords. I'd love to get hold of Batterskull, and now that I'm thinking about it, I'd love to get hold of Jite as well, because, you know, that would really improve the equipment section to no end. But again, if you have any other suggestions for equipment, let me know in the comments section below, because I'm finding it very, very useful to hear all of your suggestions. And there's obviously going to be cards that I may have missed out or not even heard of, which could definitely improve my cube. Moving on then into the artifacts itself, I mean, there's definitely some improvements there to be made for sure. I mean, I'd love to get hold of Thran Dynamo. That is definitely on my list. The Dalkin Shackles is another one I'd love to get hold of as well. Again, there's probably many more, like Winter Orb, for example, and other cards on a similar ilk. Plus, I'd love to get hold of Crucible of the World, but to be perfectly honest, at 50 quid, I'm probably just going to have to proxy that one. Get hold of Life from Loan as well, and the new Crucible of the World card on a body from the new Hour of Devastation set, which I can't wait for, just to give my green section potentially a different type of gameplay style. Maybe you could even then help properly with the Wildfire deck, in the sense that, you know, you could then end up getting the cards and your land cards then from your graveyard back to your hand, or playing them from there. So again, that's something I'm definitely looking into. But again, if you have any other suggestions for me, let me know in the comment section below, because it's been a real help, and my cube is playing infinitely better now thanks to all of the suggestions and changes that have been made from my initial set of videos. And I can't thank you all enough for spending the time watching these videos and commenting for me. It's just been absolutely humbling, and I can't thank you all enough, so thank you so much. I would just like to take this moment to thank my Patreons of the channel. I can't thank you enough for the help and support that you're giving me. If you'd like to do the same, head over to patreon.com/lifebegins@20, and there'll be a link in the description below for that as well, where there are plenty of rewards to choose from. With your support, we can really push to make this channel even better. Be sure to check out our sponsor, 5colorcombo.com, for a great range of Magic the Gathering accessories with stunning artwork, plus a great app to draft and create decks on the fly. Use the referral code LifeBegins20 for 5% off. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button for new videos every Tuesday and Friday. With your support, we can really help this channel to grow. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.